I remember a number of years ago, probably going back now at least 15, 16 years ago, I debated this guy who I'd never heard of. And there was no information on him leading up to the debate. And normally I do my opponent research and I do background investigations into what they actually argue, what have they written on the subject, what have they published, what have they lectured on. But this guy did not have a paper trail. And because it was for a friend of mine, I agreed to show up and do the exchange with this fellow. Well, it was really interesting what he did. His opening statement was to say, I can prove that Scott hates women and wants them to die from illegal abortions. And oh, by the way, he even thinks that women who are raped should be thrown in jail if they happen to have an abortion. And he really believes that he should be allowed to impose his religious ideology on all of us who disagree. And for the first 10 minutes he was going, and I mean, he just was going off on me. I found my blood pressure going up, and then it dawned on me, wait a minute, he has not argued anything that refutes what I put forward in my opening statement, my syllogism, my formal argument for the pro-life view. And once I just stepped outside being angry at the guy and just let him go, I stood up and I said, I really thought James was going to argue that I was wrong. I was relieved to see that he argued that I'm just a bad person, because at least then I could still be right. And the audience got a little bit of a chuckle out of that. But the point being, once I just stopped, took a deep breath and said, now, wait a minute, what is this guy actually arguing that refutes the case I just presented? So in my rebuttal, I simply said to the audience, look, I want you to notice something. I laid out a case for the pro-life view. I supported it with science. I supported it with philosophy. And notice that my opponent did not refute that case. Instead, he called me names. He said I was a bad person. Well, I might be the worst person on the planet, but still have a good argument. And ask yourself this question. What evidence did he present that refutes the case that I made? And of course, once I was able to reframe the debate on the merits, it took the wind out of his sails. When he just continued to attack me, it bounced off people who had been schooled now to focus on the argument. So I would encourage you, when you encounter these kinds of things, yeah, they're maddening. Yeah, they're the kind of thing you go, man, I really wish I could give this person a piece of my mind. Realize these are the weakest attacks on the pro-life view. Why? Because they don't engage it. Much more persuasive and challenging are people who either concede the unborn are human and say, we can kill them anyway, or they might argue that the unborn aren't members of the human family, and they actually try to present arguments as to why that's the case. Arguments we've dealt with on this show and undoubtedly will deal with again. But when somebody just makes the debate about you, you're really in the driver's seat if you just take a deep breath and say, wait a minute, even if this attack is true, so what? By the way, those two words, so what, ought to come back into your mental vocabulary. When people are going to try to refute you simply by being nasty to you personally, it's really helpful if you can just say, so what? Suppose they're right. What does that do to change anything here in terms of the arguments being advanced? Very helpful if you can just take that deep breath and kind of just relax a minute before you worry about it.